Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri, and I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. Today's Do You Know question is, do you know why October the 11th was selected as the feast day for Saint Pope John XXIII? In order to understand this, it's important to realize that the election of John XXIII took place after the death of the long reign of Pope Pius XII. Pope Pius XII reigned from 1939 to October the 9th, 1958, when he died after a long illness. The cardinals at the time, when they met to elect a new pope, weren't quite sure what direction they wanted the church to take, and so they decided that they would kind of focus on a candidate who would be what they called a transitional pope. In Italian, they used the word a pope that would be a papa di passaggio, a transitional pope, one who was literally half a foot in the grave. And so as a result, they decided to elect a man who was 77 years old, whose name was Angelo Roncalli, who happened to be the Cardinal Patriarch of Venice at the time. And they thought that he would be an ideal candidate for the papacy simply because he was simple and he would keep things the way they are without making any significant changes. And so they elected him, and in the choice that he made for his name, when they asked him what name had he chosen, he chose the name of John XXIII. Now, if the cardinals had been attuned to the fact of their own history, they would have known that choosing this name was rather controversial, simply because there had been a previous Pope John XXIII, a false pope, who reigned actually with two other candidates during the historical event of the church known as the Great Western Schism, in which there were all three popes running around claiming to be popes, and ultimately in the reform movement of the Council of Constance, which Pope John XXIII was forced to call in order to reform the church, he was deposed along with the other two popes, and a legitimate pope was elected. So Pope John XXIII, Angelo Roncalli, chose that name because he wanted to rehabilitate the name of John, but also he wanted to many people think, also call a council. And sure enough, within 3 months of his having been elected on October the 28th, 1958, he called he told a group of cardinals that he had an idea of calling it an ecumenical council. Ecumenical council had been called for over 100 years. And so many of the cardinals were resistant and said there's no need for such a council and so on. And Pope John XXIII decided no, there was a need, and his primary purposes were to update the church so that it would speak more directly to the situations of our day, and secondly, to work for church unity, which is still a great scandal in the church, especially since the Reformation. And so this was his work, and he persisted at it and demanded that a council be set into place. And so it took a number of years for the council to prepare, to get preparations ready for the council, but on October the 11th of 1962, the opening day of the first session of the council was inaugurated, and Pope John XXIII gave the opening speech, one of the most powerful speeches of his life. It was known in Latin as Gaudet Mater Ecclesia, Mother Church's joyful at this day, in which he basically said that saw a vision of the church that was very hopeful, and that a vision of the church that would be able to speak directly to the situation and needs of our time. And of course, the Vatican Council continued for 4 more sessions, from 1962 to 1963, 64, and 65. Unfortunately, on June the 3rd, 1963, Pope John XXIII died of cancer in the Vatican, and major argument among the cardinals was, should we elect someone who is going to continue the council? And they decided that the council was worthwhile and was doing a good job, and so they elected a man that would take the name of Pope Paul VI, who committed himself to continuing the Vatican II Council. And so, as the rest of Vatican II Council is now history, and after 50 years of the Council's vision of church and its many changes that it brought into place, we are still struggling very much to implement the beautiful vision and the forward-looking vision of the Second Vatican Council. Now, a number of popes, even Paul VI, began the movement for the cause of sainthood for Pope John XXIII, which was picked up by Pope John Paul II, who on September the 3rd in the year 2000 actually beatified Pope John XXIII, and then later on with Pope Francis felt the necessity to really move towards the beatification of Pope John XXIII. And so on April the 27th, 2014, Pope Francis canonized Pope John XXIII, who became now known as Saint Pope John XXIII. And typically, the feast day for any saint was typically associated with the day that they died. But in this particular case, it was decided that Francis decided that the best day to celebrate the feast of Saint Pope John XXIII would be October the 11th. The most significant day of his papacy, namely the inauguration and the opening day of the Second Vatican Council. So I hope this has helped to explain just a bit of why we chose, or the Church chose, October 11th as the feast day for the celebration of Saint Pope John XXIII. And I hope you will return again to more Do You Know questions to learn more about our faith and about significant people like Pope John XXIII. Thank you.